Good night, viewers, and welcome to this another program of Breaking Down the Issues. The official host of this program is the Honorable Shurwayne Holder, Member of Parliament and Shadow Minister of Natural Resources. This program comes to you every Thursday night from 18:30 hours to 20 hours. The topic for tonight is matters of national importance. And so at this stage, I want to introduce the official host of this program, the Honorable Shurwayne Holder, Member of Parliament and Shadow Minister of Natural Resources. My name is Dennis Jaikran, and I would be moderating this program tonight.
Good
Honorable
night.
Holder, thank you very much for being on this program, and I want to take this opportunity to welcome you once again to your program.
Thanks for coordinating the program, Comrade Jaikaran. It's always a pleasure to be on these programs, whether it's my program or any other program where we disseminate information or we analyze information to the best of our ability, and we put it out there so that the public can understand what exactly is currently happening in our country. So, good night to you. Good night to your viewing and listening audience.
So, Comrade Holder, tonight we want to deal with three major issues as it relates to the matters of national interest. The first of its kind would be the Guyana Venezuela territorial controversy. That would be number one. The second one would be issues in the national resources sector, small miners, and the proposed oil spill bill. And then the third issue, we are going to deal with an update of the Adriana Young's demise. And so, having set the stage as to what are the areas we will focus on, and not limited to these areas, I want to pose the first question to you. Over the past 24 hours, it was reported that troops of the Guyana Defense Force came under fire in three separate attacks, reportedly by men in civilian clothing on the Venezuela side of the Cayuni River. That was reported, and I know that you have your fingers on this particular issue. So I'm going to pose this question to you. Please speak to this issue as it relates to that little background I give you there. What happened over the past 24, maybe 30 hours, and our GDF troops coming under attack, fire, so to speak, from civilians on the Cayenne side of the Venezuela border. Speak to that issue, Member of Parliament.
All right, thank you, Comrade Jaikaran. Um, as you mentioned, our troops came under attack, several attacks rather, during the last 24 hours. We were made aware of this through the media. And to be honest, I was a little alarmed because when I saw it in one of the online media, I was looking I went straight away to the GDF page to see, online to see if there was any report of such. And in all honesty, I didn't see anything of the sort until maybe hours later. I did see GDF, I think is the head of GDF and two other senior ranks would have spoken to the issue. In fact, they held up, I believe it's a press conference, though I didn't really get the opportunity to listen to them. But I was taken back because it's a very serious matter, and one would expect that as quickly as possible, the nation would be alerted to it from the GDF and not, by some media house or some second-hand, third-hand information. So I was happy to see the GDF address the issue uh, eventually. But I think in the future, I understand that some of these matters are complex, but it's a serious matter. Our troops are at the border there, risking their lives, and if they come under attack, then the nation needs to know about it immediately from the GDF. So that is the first thing I would want to say on the issue. The second thing I would say is that it is not the first time, though it's not the first time our troops would have come under fire. I think a little earlier in the year, you had an incident as well, and if not the incidents in the past. But the fact that we would have had, or they would have reported, three separate attacks just in the last 24 hours certainly says something as we draw nearer and nearer to this. I know you would talk about it a little later in the program, to these elections that they want to hold, would like to hold in the Essequibo. And so it is very, very worrying. I want to assure the public and our soldiers, our boys in green, who are out there risking their lives, that we in the opposition, we're paying close attention to it. We thank them for their service and everything that they're doing in terms of protecting our borders. And we pray that, they continue to do their jobs out there um, incident free, without the loss of life or anything to that effect. But it is very, very worrying at this stage. We all know we all know the issue of the border, well, the territorial controversy, as we rightfully put it, the territorial controversy. Um, this would have been settled since, in our view, since 1899, where there was that award in terms of what we now call Essequibo. That border issue was settled since 1899. And then I believe it was backed up sometime in the 60s through uh, through some intervention relating to Geneva. I think is relating to the Geneva. I can't remember what you call it, but that was in the 60s. And so we are declaring that we are the rightful owners, the rightful occupiers. The Essequibo is ours. It has always been ours. We are the only ones who would have occupied this region. Essequibo, and the funny thing is that Essequibo forms about 60% of Guyana. For those who might not realize that, Essequibo forms about 60% of our country. And it is a region that we heavily depend upon in terms of natural resource, in the areas of gold mining, forestry, and so many other, well, agriculture, and so many other economic activities that are important to Guyana. And so we will continue to monitor the situation from the opposition perspective. We'll continue to monitor and update the nation as we see fit as the situation unfolds.
Thank you, MP. Another such incident, MP, would have occurred, so to speak, sometime in February of this year. Can you make that link between what happened then and what happened now. But the only thing is
Well,
that in February there were injuries, but in this one, as reported so far, there would have been no injury. So make that link, so to speak, between what happened then and what happened 24, 30 hours ago.
well, the first thing you would recognize, I can't remember the exact date of the incident in February. But the first thing you'd recognize is that every time we have an activity or a date, rather, which symbolizes our sovereignty, our that we are a sovereign nation, um, we noticed that Venezuela would make some move with that regard. And so February, we would have had our republic on the 23rd of February. And it would be a good thing to cross check the date to see when that would have occurred, when that incident would have occurred. But I would want to suspect that it is sometime uh, the 17th, I'm told. I'm told it's 17th. So I was going to say I would want to suspect it sometime close to the Republic. And again, as we approach or we begin to look towards independence. I believe they are looking to send a message again and link it to these specific events which establish that we are a sovereign nation. And so that is the first thing I would want to see, or the first observation that one can easily make with respect to the two incidents. Another observation is the handling of these matters. You'd recall in February when the incident would have occurred. I believe you had a lot of back and forth in terms of if it really did occur and the circumstances surrounding what actually would have transpired there. And so I would urge that the government and the GDF handle these matters in a very transparent manner. Um, Once there is transparency, it would help. It would help the entire country to firmly understand what is happening, and we will be more reassured that certain steps are being taken to ensure that our borders are protected and that our people, importantly, are protected.
Now that you have answered that question, MP, recently the International Court of Justice made a ruling as it relates to the Guyana, to the Venezuela plan, rather, to hold elections in Guyana's Essequibo region. Relate that to this whole situation, because that decision is a very important decision as it relates to that step that Venezuela wants to take to hold elections to appoint a governor. Maybe they have named that person, but just to go through the election process and to appoint other persons, elect them, so to speak. And so the International Court of Justice made a decision in favor of Guyana as it relates to them not holding such an elections. Speak to that issue for us, MP.
Yes, thanks again. Um, in light of Venezuela's announcement of them or their intention to hold elections in Essequibo, we would have carried the matter to the international court, and thankfully, the international court would have handed down a ruling, if I can call it that, or a decision rather, refraining Venezuela from holding those elections. All would know that we have the substantive matter before the courts, which will finally decide on a settlement or decide on a decision which would be binding to both countries. And so the court saw it fit to refrain Venezuela in this case. In fact, if we look back at their previous ruling, I believe they would have asked both parties to let the status quo remain and to not do anything to cause any changes in that regard. And so, with this announcement from Venezuela, we took it up to the International Court, and they would have issued a decision which states, or which refrains rather, Venezuela from making any moves in terms of an election in Essequibo. But I want to say that it is an absurd move by Venezuela. It is more of a sham because I can't see how exactly they intend to hold elections in Essequibo when, for example, there are no Venezuelans that, or should be no Venezuelans. Let me be very, very careful. There should be no Venezuelans in occupying the region, legally occupying the region. As far as we know, you have persons coming through the border from Essequibo, from Venezuela rather, which we in the opposition are concerned about. We constantly quiz the government on it. We're very unhappy. We're very, very unhappy with the latest response from Home Affairs Minister Robson Ben. If we go back to the record, I believe it was the last parliament, a question was asked how many Venezuelans are in the various regions, and the numbers he gave were very interesting. I believe there was one region where he either gave the number zero or very little in the single digits. And we know, the people know on the ground, that there are Venezuelans all across this country. There are Venezuelans in the Essequibo region, in Region 1, in Region 2, where you live, Comrade Jaikaran. And practically all of the regions have Venezuelans. In some regions more than others in terms of the numbers. And so it speaks volume, the response that we got from the government through Robeson Ben in terms of those numbers. It is two things. Either he doesn't know or he doesn't want to share the figures. And either way, either decision, either of it is ridiculous, because why wouldn't you want to share that with the opposition? You know, we're supposed to be united on this matter. While we have our political differences, when it comes to the territorial issue, we're expected to operate as one. The president likes to say and likes to talk about this one Guyana, but it's always a one-sided Guyana or one PPP Guyana. They only look to serve their own interests rather than the interests of the people of this country. And on this particular issue, any government worth its salt is expected, as governments in the past did. Under Forbes Burnham PNC government, we ensured that, or Burnham rather ensured, his government ensured that the opposition was well briefed on every single matter. We didn't play games with it. And so it is very, very disappointing to see the kind of games being played by this People's Progressive Party. In fact, I should add that after you had that agreement, or whatever we want to call it, in St. Vincent, You would recall that prior to that, and I'm sure we'll get into more of this discussion as we go on.
Yes.
But you would recall that the opposition was eventually engaged on the matter as things got worse and fears were heightened in the country. And so the PPP had no choice to engage Aubrey Norton and the opposition on the matter. And you would recall our positions taken on it. And after there was some level of agreement, when Ali came back, it was, back to normal. In fact, I saw him in some media outlet bearing gifts or sharing gifts with Maduro, which I think personally was harmful, was uncalled for, is something, you don't just carry a bottle of expensive rum to a president or a country that would have opposed you with respect to your border issue or a territorial issue for decades. And you don't just do that. So I don't know if he thought that this was a some kind of corner shop operation, or some casual thing. You can't treat with such important matters um, in that way. But we've always said that the People's Progressive Party are transactional. They're not very skilled in the area of diplomacy. There might be one or two persons there, but as a collective, they're not very skilled at it. All they seem to believe is that you can, buy your way out of things or do some transaction and that would take care of it. Diplomacy does not operate or occur in that manner. And we've seen that in other issues, diplomatic issues as well. For example, with the Suriname issue with regards to the fishing license, we would have seen a transactional kind of arrangement to the point where they were boasting that this thing would have been done. But we in the opposition would have long said to the public and long said to them that it doesn't work that way. And 5 years later, we're vindicated because throughout their term, they were not able
Nothing was happening.
to come to an agreement with Suriname for those licenses. So that much I would say.
Okay. So thank you very much, MP. But let me say for now, for the last final question on this particular matter, issue, so to speak. And if by chance there's need for us to come back to any other issue on the Guyana-Venezuela border controversy, we shall do that. But I want to pose this question to you. And the question is, as a lawmaker of this country, you know that, as a member of parliament, because you sit in the National Assembly. And so the question to you is, do you think that the government of Guyana is doing enough of what is expected to deal with this ongoing situation? While you explain that, I want you to, today, the Honorable Aubrey Norton, leader of the People's National Congress Reform and leader of the opposition, came out boldly as normal and with his elegance made a statement. And you know that that is one of his strong areas also, diplomacy, international relations. And in that statement, he was able to capture a number of things. So let us take it first. Do you think that this government is doing enough of what is expected in this situation? And then when you would have answered that part of it, then you speak to the issue of some of the things you are aware that would have been made in the statement by our comrade leader.
Thank you for that question. The answer is no, certainly not enough, not nearly enough. In fact, the PPP government seem not to have a clear plan to deal with this situation. As I was saying previously, just earlier, diplomacy is not their strong point, and diplomacy is one area of dealing with such a controversy, and they're not very strong at it. But more importantly, their posture since the Saint Vincent Agreement has been a lax one, a lackadaisical one. They seem to believe that since they met with Maduro and they had a talk, that was the end of it. And we all knew, based on our past experience, that that could not be so. And a more proactive approach had to be taken. Look, we outlined we outlined a number of measures. I believe there was a motion in Parliament for which we participated and we pledged full support to the government. A lot of persons were critical of us because of the actions of the government towards its citizens over a number of years, because of their vindictiveness and a number of other things. Sections of society were questioning why is it that we gave them that support, but we explained to the public that this is a national issue. And even as we are pushing to become the next government, we must have a country to govern. And so, um, that says it all. And so we gave them critical support, notwithstanding our differences. We laid out in a motion that we both agreed to, because the motion had to be prepared by one side. I can't remember if it was us. Well, in fact, they had a motion, as I recall. They had a motion that they put forward, and we looked at it and we recognized that it was deficient, and we made a lot of changes to that motion to which they agreed. But we didn't come out to the public to take praise for it, because at the end of the day, it was for the greater good of Guyana. And so we didn't want credit for it, because this was a motion that we both agreed upon and should implement. That is the whole point of moving the motion at the parliamentary level. And after doing that, I believe you had the St. Vincent Agreement, and the government came back and did nothing. They implemented practically no measure contained in that motion. And I can tell you some of the measures were in respect of public relations. I can lobbying. I can clearly recall the leader talking about an approach to engage other Latin America countries and the Caribbean on this issue. You would have advised spending some funds in some of those countries to promote our message, because the situation is that Venezuela, for example, within their country, from the time you're a little boy or a little girl, you're told that Essequibo belongs to Venezuela, although they wouldn't know Venezuela. So they have that propaganda going on. We have to counter that with our own strategy, getting our message out there into those Latin America countries. We should be engaging friends of Venezuela. For example, Cuba, we share a good relationship with Venezuela. We laid out a number of measures. We put out what should happen on the border. We spoke to how we should go about equipping the military, and a number of things we would have had in that motion, but they failed to do anything about it. And so we are very much um, disappointed. We are very much angry that today we cannot stand in one voice, stand in one voice to denounce Venezuela and to do things together. What we would have seen after that agreement again is a complete shutout of the opposition at the parliamentary level, and I think this is a key one. At the parliamentary level, there is a committee that is responsible for foreign affairs. And how it's being chaired, it's every year. One year the government chairs it, the other year the opposition chairs it. But the government, since the time would have expired for their stint, would have constantly refused to give up the seat and to allow the opposition to chair. I don't know, something as simple as that. And there's where the self-interest comes in, because I believe they are worried that we will look better than them. They understand that we understand diplomacy well. We understand foreign affairs. We have people that are still alive, like Carl Greenwich, Ronald Austin Sr., and many others who would have served in the PNC government as ambassadors, real ambassadors, with real experience and understanding of the Venezuela-Guyana controversy. And so it is my view that they believe that we will take certain actions once we get control of the Foreign Affairs Committee. We will push for certain actions, and that will make them look bad. But the crux of the matter is that it is supposed to be a bipartisan committee where there shouldn't be any rambling. These matters are discussed, government and opposition comes up with a plan, and we execute. But this is how the PPP operates. They do not want the opposition to be in a position where we can have a positive impact on the country. And it is very, very sad. They've also sidelined us. You would have seen on social media an attempt to have the regions in the Essequibo, the leadership in those regions, whether it's the mayors or the regional chairpersons, they would have had them speak to the issue of these elections, these purported elections that Venezuela wants to hold. And they would have denounced it and make the claim that Essequibo belongs to Guyana. But in doing so, I have no problem with that. But what I have a problem with is when you deliberately exclude an entire region because it is controlled or it was won by the opposition. And so the opposition has the chairperson there, or a majority at the chairperson, a majority of councillors in that region. And we saw that happening in Region 7. Reports coming from the region is that the regional chairman was never properly engaged in any discussion or any activity in relation to our pushback against Venezuela. And so I think that act is an unpatriotic one. It is one that puts the interests of the PPP above everything else and above the interests, safety, and well-being of the Guyanese people. And so that is unacceptable. We can't, in no terms, we can accept such behavior from the government of the day. We noticed that they are planning to host a concert or some fanfare in Region 2 on the 25th. Now, that to me is absurd, and they would have excluded the opposition. I myself, I am the regional MP, one of the regional, well, I'm the regional MP. There's another MP there, but I'm the regional MP for Region 2 and chairman of the PNC. And I've never been informed or invited to any such activity. And as a matter of fact, something like that, I don't believe that I would want to attend either, because you can't have a fanfare when you have a serious and real threat in terms of the existence of the people in that region. And so they're planning that activity without the opposition involvement. And what is more comical, and I don't know how they chose Region 2, because you have other regions that are directly on the border, where I believe you should have a series of activities, like Region 1 and Region 7, which they are excluded. But what I find very comical is the fact that this year, given this threat, they are keeping the independence celebration. Mind you, I should say for the viewers, the activity that Venezuela plans, this sham elections, are planned for the 25th. That is the day before. It's very deliberate. It is the day before our independence. And so they're very deliberate in their action. But we seem to be all over the place. We're holding our independence celebration in the county of Borbice. Just let that sink in. While Maduro and Venezuela are threatening to hold an elections in Essequibo, however they plan to do it. They want to put a governor, and I believe it's 8 legislators, if I can call them that. That is their intention. While our government saw it fit to hold their independence celebration in the county of Borbi. So as Venezuela moves in from the west, we are moving east. It conveys the wrong message. It conveys the wrong message. It is very backward of this government to do such a thing. But this backwardness is not by accident. When you choose not to involve all the stakeholders, this is the result. I believe you spoke to another, you asked another
I, I,
question.
I like the way MP you responded. The answer to that question I ask you is that, do you think that this government is doing well under the circumstances? It's more than that I ask. But you were on point and you explained. And the last one was very important when you said that in a time like this, which is important for us in this country, you are taking in national celebration to a county, a region that is far remote from the major issue. And so you cannot count in any way or in any form that that is patriotism. That has been very unpatriotic, so to speak. And so I'm happy that you answer with those explanations there. So I come to the other part of this question to be answered. As I mentioned early on, the leader of the opposition, Honorable Aubrey Norton, made a statement. And so, if you can point out some of the main areas in which that statement focused on, so that we can now put all of these things we were discussing, the icing on the cake, so to speak, as we conclude the discussion on this part of this program.
Well, I was just looking, glancing at the leader's statement that he put out late this afternoon, sometime this afternoon. I shouldn't say late, but sometime this afternoon. And basically, he's saying that we are aware that the arbitral award of 1899 settled the question of the border between Guyana and Venezuela, and he has reaffirmed that Essequibo belongs to us, the people of Guyana, and we will continue um, as an opposition, constant support to ensure that Essequibo continues to be the property of Guyana. He's also expressed that the opposition supports the case before the ICJ, and we believe that in the opposition, that is, we'll have a positive outcome, which, in terms of the judgment, which will formally state that Essequibo belongs to us and our borders are rightfully placed. He is also in that statement said to the public that he is aware, or the opposition is aware, of these sham elections intended by Venezuela, and he's condemned it and said no such elections should take place. He's further said that no Guyanese should be voting or be allowed to vote in such elections. I want to say it for the public very clearly that any such move by any Guyanese would be deemed unpatriotic, and what is worse, would be deemed or seen as treason, because you can't be Guyanese on Guyanese soil and vote in an illegal election for another country to lay claim or to establish anything within Guyana. And so any such move would be deemed as treason, and we would support the necessary action under the law to once it is applied properly, fairly, transparently, we will support any action taken by the police or the necessary forces to deal with that. So he laid that out very, very clearly in his letter. He also made mention, which I would have mentioned just now, of the number of proposals that we would have made in previous debates in Parliament. And in meetings with the president, you would recall that the leader had several meetings with the president, and he would have laid out a series of steps, proposals for which the government should embrace and activate to ensure that we are protected and we safeguard our borders. But what he's saying in the letter is that the government failed to honor. They agreed with us. And when their hands were tied, their backs were against the wall, we supported them and they agreed with us. But when things cleared up, they failed to honor that agreement. And so at this point in time, because of those failures and because of their unacceptable behavior in terms of sidelining the opposition, in terms of, and I spoke about it, their position with respect to the Foreign Affairs Committee, with respect to them sidelining regions, border regions that are controlled by the opposition. We cannot cooperate and support the government. But I want to make it very, very clear, and he made it clear in the statement. We are in support 100% for the people of Guyana. We are denouncing these acts. We offer full rebuke to Maduro and Venezuela and all their plans with these sham elections. But we cannot see at this time, at this stage, how we can cooperate with the government, given their behavior, given their disregard for everything that we would have proposed. You can't come when you're back against the wall to us, and when everything calms down, you go back to the same old ways that you had. We have to treat this issue as a serious one. We're a serious opposition. We're very much concerned about the safety and well-being of the residents of the Essequibo County. And we will continue to do everything possible to ensure that they are protected, to ensure that these plans by Venezuela are foiled, to ensure that the people of that county can live in peace and without fear. And I think, in a nutshell, that is what the leader, in his statement today, has essentially put to the people of Guyana.
Thank you very much, MP.
If I can
Before,
add, Comrade
yeah, you go
Taikaran,
ahead.
I should have said that, I should have elaborated a little more. We did speak about the PPP transactional approach towards diplomacy. Here, if you examine this statement by Aubrey Norton, you will see someone that understands the issue, that has experience in terms of dealing with these matters. And so I believe that he is well positioned to make these sorts of statements that we see him put out here today. He's qualified to make the kind of statement. I can't say the same for the president and the others on the other side.
Yeah, thanks for that additional information. Well, let me say this before we go into the area of the natural resources issues. You see, once you sweep under the carpet every single thing that is of nationhood, nation building, there are dire consequences thereafter. And one of the important things of nationhood and nation building that this government thought it fit to do away with is the Guyana National Service. And there has been no emphasis, so to speak, on other areas of nationhood as it relates to our national symbols, our national songs, our national anthem, our pledge, our motto, one people, one nation, one destiny. There is no attachment, there is far. These things are far remote from the education system of this country. And if you ask them, when last did they produce any booklet, 2 pages and more, related to the Guyana Venezuela controversy, it would be difficult for them to be able to respond to that. So I thought it fit that I should add to the things that you would have said, important as they are, and so that we get it to the end of the tunnel, so to speak.
If,
So,
if I can just
yes,
state
yes, MP.
on your point, look, the PPP has been in charge of this country for the last 28 years, um, 28 of the last 33 years. They've been in charge, and so what you're talking about, I can certainly relate to it. The public can certainly relate to it. Even children in school now these days, um, I don't believe that they know these patriotic songs. They have any understanding or knowledge of the territorial issue with Venezuela. There isn't this sense of patriotism being instilled through the schools and various programs as we have it now or as we had it then. I know growing up as a little boy, every morning you go to school, you had to sing "Oh Beautiful Guyana." You had to know from Pacaraimas, a number of patriotic songs you had to know as a primary school child. I am not certain that the children even know the four stanzas of the national anthem. I'm not convinced that enough emphasis is being placed on these things in the school system and through other programs. And the blame has to be laid squarely at the feet of the People's Progressive Party because, as I said, they have been in charge of this country for 28 of the last 33 years. And so it is strictly on them. Hopefully, well, I know elections are coming year end, and we expect to form next government. And at that stage, we'll have to do serious work to change it.
You know, MP, there has been total desecration of all our national symbols. More particularly, look at how they are treating our national flags, our national flag rather, without any respect. You go to government places, state properties, and what have you. The rule as it relates to how do they fly those flags, the days of the week when it is not Sundays and holidays from 6 to 6, they do not observe that. Even the police stations when you pass after 6 o'clock. But that is another part, another story that we can spend 2 3 hours as it relates to national symbol. So MP, thank you very much for this part of this discourse, and we want to now move into an area in which you are very very versed in, and that is you are shadow minister of natural resources. And so I want to say to you that it was brought to the attention of our viewers and very many persons that there are serious challenges as it relates to natural resources in this country, especially that the small scale miners are faced with these challenges. Take us through this discourse.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks again for your question, Comrade Jaikaran. Look, gold mining, and I want to zone in on gold mining specifically, small scale gold miners and gold mining as a whole. Gold has been one of those industries which would have contributed significantly to our national economy and our GDP over the years. I can recall a period of time where gold was practically carrying the economy in a significant way when the other resources The other areas like agriculture, sugar especially, would have dropped significantly. Forestry as well, lumber production would have declined significantly, bauxite and others. Gold was the one that was carrying the country in a significant way. And it's very, very worrying, the situation facing the gold miners, especially the small and medium scale miners at this stage. You know, we have a golden opportunity since the discovery of oil, um, that would have increased our economy maybe three or four times over. We've had a golden and still have a golden opportunity to do well and to do better in the area of gold mining. But if you look at the records from 2019, that was our last full year, you could say, 2019. If you compare that with every year of the People's Progressive Party, you would see a constant and significant decline. And that decline is not with the few large scale companies. It is with the small and medium scale miners. And so it must be obvious that there are deep rooted problems within the gold mining industry that is obviously affecting small and medium scale miners. And one of the things, I've written a letter just a few days ago after receiving a number of complaints from miners in several regions. In Region 7, in Region 8, in Region 1 as well. I received some reports from there. And all of those complaints had one particular issue in common: government interference. Interference by the minister, interference through the mining authority, GGMC. That was the common link with these complaints. You had other complaints, but that was the most glaring one. Government constantly trying to put small miners off of their claims, either put them off of the claims, deny their application, prolonging the application, finding some frivolous excuse to put them out of work. And at the same time, this is not done um, in isolation. What we recognize is that when they try to put these small miners off these lands, at the same time, they're trying to bring in friends, larger scale miners onto the land, friends of the government. In every case, every complaint that I had in regions 1, 7, and 8 over the last week, this was the common thing. This was the major complaint. Now, you would have seen some court cases which would have played out. And practically in every one of those matters, the court ruled that the government was unfair to the miners. And in every one of those judgments, we see the government again appealing those matters. There was a particular case where I paid close attention to. I can't remember the miner's name, but he applied for the claim in 2012. Over our time in government, it was assessed, the area was drawn up, you had the maps and everything, and his name was put to it. It was approved. The only thing that happened is that he wasn't given the actual paper, the actual approval. And when we left office, or before we left office, there was a particular larger scale miner who had or who has a mining operation in the river next door. This guy is on the bank and he's on the river. And he made some claim, and he's a friend of the government, without a shadow of a doubt. He made a claim, he tried to make a claim to the land. But as the Mining Act stipulates, or the regulations stipulate, the updated regulations that is, if you are mining if you have a river claim, then you can't make any claim to the land that are adjacent on the riverbank. You can't. Before, in the early stages, decades ago, you could have. There was an allowance. But in the updated Mining Act, you're not allowed. And this is quite clear. Yet, GGMC continued rather to entertain this friend of the government in obstructing raiding the land of the small miner. The miner took the matter seriously. He made certain applications, and GGMC would have set up a hearing, and a magistrate, I believe, would have served as the hearing. I can't remember what you call it, but the person who headed that hearing was a magistrate, and that magistrate ruled, and I've seen these documents. That magistrate ruled that the land belonged to the small miner, and made all sorts of pronouncements in terms of how GGMC operated unfairly with the miner. Yet they refused. GGMC refused to grant the permit. The minister, in the latest action, the minister moved to what do you call it? Belatedly is not the exact word I want to use to describe it, but retroactively put an order out to for the government to take the land. You're making some kind of claims. Oh, the government suddenly wants this land. And that matter went to court, and the Chief Justice, I believe, or a judge, a sitting judge, ruled upon it and rebuked the minister for his actions, and ruled again that the land belonged to the miner. But yet again, the miner is yet to to receive his official document. And that is what they're constantly doing to minors. If you follow this recent case in the court, I believe it's in the Starbuck News and the other print media, you will see the great similarity where the Chief Justice is rebuking GGMC and the government for the way how they treat with a minor. Certain claims, specific claims are being made where the Chief Justice is clearly saying that, look, there is no violation by this minor, and you, the minister and authority, GGMC, are violating your own orders. Anybody go on Google, you can check these recent cases. It tells you of the posture of the government with respect to the small miners and what they're trying to do for their friends, family, and favorites. And it's very, very unfortunate. It is wrong, and it is something I intend and we intend as an opposition. When we get government, we are going to rectify this situation once and for all. There are lots of miners that are struggling, suffering at the hands of this government, and we are making a commitment to them that we are going to rectify these problems. We are going to rid GGMC of the corruption, and we are going to correct all these wrongs that the PPP has been doing to these small miners. The next issue that exists within the industry is the way how GGMC generally operates. And I've been getting a lot of complaints from within GGMC that a particular senior, very, very senior person at the GGMC has been making a lot of illegal or putting a lot of illegal instructions out to the staff, forcing them to do certain things to small miners. These staff would have been saying to reach out to me, and they would have been expressing their disgust. Some of them said they left the work. I've spoken with at least two persons who left GGMC. They said to me point blank that they're fed up, tired with the illegal instructions that are passed down to them, the favoritism, certain things they want these wardens to enforce in an unfair manner. And if you speak up, then you're suspended, you're sent off the job, you're dismissed. That is what is actually happening at GGMC in the government's effort, through the government's effort to facilitate their friends, family, and favorites within the mining industry. And that is why we see the mining industry is heading steeply downwards. I saw an article just recently which says that, which paints the picture as though the mining industry, the gold mining industry, is doing well. They would have cited the revenue, which would have been that increase in revenue. But it is not even half of what we could have accomplished had they done the right thing, had they supported the small miners, had they refrained from bullying tactics and pushing out of these small miners. In my budget presentation, I did a quick calculation of what was lost in the last 5 years, and the revenue that we could have received could have funded our entire, if I remember correctly, our budget, for example, our 2020 budget, which was about $300 billion. I believe that was the revenue. I can't remember clearly, but I believe that was the revenue which was calculated that we would have lost. So we're not doing very well in mining. Um, we're not achieving our full potential or nearly our full potential. And the small miners are the ones that are made to suffer under this PPP government.
Thank you very much, MP. Um, so we can conclude two things, that our small miners are really challenged in all of these situations. And as an extension, that the officers of the GGMC are faced with discriminatory acts, wanting to do what is right and correct. So these are things that need to be looked at. And I think you are the person befitting of the position of Shadow Minister of Natural Resources to take note of this. And so there is this proposed oil spill bill that is supposed to be up for discussion sometime. Take us through this bill, MP.
All right. Thanks for your question. I see time is really catching up on us.
Yes.
Quickly, it's the oil pollution prevention, preparedness, and responsibility bill. I think that is the name of the bill, 2025, which was proposed a few weeks ago and which is set on the order paper for tomorrow. I'd say two things quickly on the bill. It is hypocritical. Look, we welcome any bill, any piece of legislation that is aimed at um, bringing some good or righting some wrong. We will welcome that. In this case, the oil pollution bill. Um, I think it is necessary, but at the same time, we cannot ignore the hypocritical nature of the PPP. We cannot ignore what they would have done in the past. Now coming with a bill because it is election time, and so they're electioneering right now, scrambling to put certain things together because time is short. They know that they will be out of government in a few months' time, and so they're trying to squeeze in this one. This is a government that fought tooth and nail against um, full coverage, full coverage liability in the case of an oil spill. You would recall the case that was brought. I can't remember who were the persons that brought that court case, where Justice Kisun made some serious pronouncements against the EPA and the government, and he ruled in favor of the persons who brought that bill, stating clearly that there should be full coverage in the sense that the oil companies should cover every aspect of an oil spill in terms of cleanup, compensation, every single thing. There is no cap on it, no limitation on it. And so that was, in a nutshell, because we're running out of time, that was the basis of his ruling. But this very government joined that matter, for tooth and nail to join that matter, and cause it to be appealed. Now, this was a ruling in favor of Guyana, in favor of the people of this country, and they opposed it. It is you can't explain something like that. You cannot explain something like that. It is unpatriotic. It, it goes against the norms of any good government, any government that cares about its people and its country. Excuse me. And so to come now with a piece of legislation saying that you want full coverage, while even as you have an appeal against full coverage, is absurd. It is very, very absurd. And to top it off, the opposition would have submitted, I believe, 2 years ago. We submitted a motion to have this done, and they opposed it. They shut it down. It is to say that the opposition can't be accommodated in any aspect of um, of governance in this country. And so it is very hypocritical. We have to see it for what it is. There are some other technical issues there because the bill speaks to a number of things, to the prevention first and foremost, and we can touch on that quickly in terms of prevention. Now you're trying to, or you're claiming that you want to prevent an oil spill. You had an environmental impact assessment done before the permit was issued to the oil company. And that document or that assessment spoke to the limits, the conditions. It spoke to the technical stuff with regards to production, and it cited the production level, for example, of the Liza 1 well. as 100 barrels per day. And it had an upper limit because it fluctuates, production fluctuates. But the average, if we can say that, is 100 barrels per day. And something is happening technically, or I'm still on. Okay,
You're
okay.
on.
Yeah,
You're on. You're on.
my screen just
Yes.
went out, so I thought that it was blackout or something. Yes. So I was
Maybe
saying
the oil spill.
the the environmental impact assessment spoke to this issue. That it is rated at 100 or a max capacity of 120, but you would have allowed or continue to allow a production level over and above, way over and above, in the form of about 30,000 barrels more, 150,000 barrels per day. And we're talking about prevention. Now, for certain, that rings some bells. If you have equipment designed to do a specific amount, and I'm not saying that you can't push it, engineers do certain things, but I'm not certain that that is the safe thing to do. That is the question. Is it the safe thing to do? Are we going to do, or did they do another a follow-up impact assessment or some sort of assessment to us to assess the equipment, assess the rig, whether this is a safe practice or a practice that is in keeping with international standards with respect to oil production. So you can't talk about preventing an oil spill and you're just trying to push these issues aside. And so to me, it is just a piece of legislation, a piece of paper that they're bringing. We don't even know if they will enact the legislation because there are several pieces of legislation which were passed, which they have not enacted. They have not bring um, into the fold where they operationalize it. And so, to my mind, they just want to bring this piece of legislation to say, to mark their name, to say they're present, they've done something. Or tomorrow you will hear that the APNU, AFC didn't do this and didn't do that. But I want them to understand that certain legislation will come as the industry evolves. So you can expect next year, the other year, as the production level rises, or capability and so change, you will have new legislation. That's the first thing. But as early as it was, when we started production, and as inexperienced as we were, we saw it fit to put some of these things in the permits. And so technically, the oil companies were still bound by these regulations. So it wasn't a case where there was nothing in existence. We had them sign on to these things. In fact, in terms of their full liability, I'm told that they signed on to it. They agreed with it after discussion, after robust discussion between the government and the companies. But when the PPP came to power, they tossed these things aside and they changed the permit, basically allowing the companies to do as they please. Now, we are very thankful that we hadn't a major oil spill, because if we had a major oil spill, we would have been in serious trouble. Environmentally, we would have been in trouble. Economically, we would have been in trouble. The fishing industry, for example, that would have been a total disaster. Thousands of homes and families affected. Our ecosystem would have been affected. It could have been a situation where, for example, the oil spread to other territories, other countries. Then you can have a crisis, especially in the case of Venezuela. They can use something like that to create other problems for us. And so it was very wrong what they did in terms of removing those clauses from the various permits and allowing um, that situation where we went uninsured, unprotected. But now they come back, and trust me, they will say that we didn't do it, and now and they're doing it now. You know, so you gotta read into these guys. You gotta know the facts when they come to say certain things. You gotta be able to track what really occurred in the past and see what put it against what they're saying.
Thank you, MP. MP, we have 2 minutes more to wrap up this program. So it would appear as though we might not get in our third matter of national importance, which is very important for us. And so I want to strongly believe that you might instruct that we deal with this next week, by which time we would have more information as it relates to the Adriana Young's demise. And so, in the final few minutes remaining, 2, 3 minutes, can I ask you to give your closing remarks?
Well, I what I would say, I really had hoped that we could have gotten into the details of this national issue. I want to call it a national issue with
Yes.
respect to the murder of Adriana Young, the way how they're handling the poor handling of the murder, the investigation, every aspect of it. But I guess next week, as you rightfully say, we can we can look deeper when we'll have much more um, information. Look, all I want to close with is that Guyanese are seeing certain events unfold in this country. Over the past 5 years, we in the opposition would have been bringing you up to date on these matters. We see a situation that exists where we see an incompetent government in many instances. We see a corrupt government in many instances. And it those things only serve to prevent us as Guyanese from experiencing the quality of life that we should experience given our newfound wealth. We in the APNU understand these issues. We've crafted policies for every sector. Our main focus, our main approach is a people centered development approach where we will put you, the Guyanese, first and at the center of our development plan. We will ensure that we significantly reduce the corruption, the levels of corruption that we're seeing in the society today. And I believe that is one of the major issues that we have that is causing so much confusion, so much um, so much issues to arise within the various sectors of this country. And so we are making a commitment to govern this country in a better way than we would have seen in the last 5 years. Under Aubrey Norton's leadership, we will look towards clean governance, a government that cares for all Guyanese, regardless of your race, religion, where you live. We will cater for every single Guyanese. There is no reason why every Guyanese, whether it's 700, 800,000, whatever the number is, whatever the total is, there is no reason why each and every Guyanese should not be able to live a comfortable life in this country. That is what we guarantee as the next government.
Thank you very much, MP. And I want to say that we had a very, very informative program. And I want to thank you very much for sharing the information you always have at hand. Viewers, we want to thank you very much for tuning in. And we ask of you to continue to look at this program every Thursday night from 18:30 hours to 20 hours. The official host of whom is the Honorable Shurwayne Holder, Member of Parliament and Shadow Minister of Natural Resources. Thank you. Have a good night and may God bless you.